Good morning. Welcome to our daily Patreon class in Avraham. We are starting a new Torah today, Torah Ayin Dalet in Tinyana. This is a Torah that is short, very dense, and it's one of the types of Torahs that people find very difficult to learn because it's expecting certain flexibility of interpretation on the part of the reader and mental preparation to understand how Rabbi Nachman is explaining the concepts that he's going to present. But I wanted to say this as an introduction because the words in the verses that he brings are lifted out of the verses and used in another context. And we understand that the Torah is one document, and all of it is holy, and all of it is from the Ruach HaKodesh of Moshe Rabbeinu and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so we have this license to compare, to lift ideas and words out of text and compare them with other words. But we have to understand the allusions embedded in the words. And those allusions that are in the words are relatable to other words that have other allusions. So let's look at it inside, and I think you'll see what I mean. The Rebbe begins, Ahar Purim Korim Parshat Para. After Purim, which is coming up in a little while, we read the Parshat of Para, of the purification through the red heifer. The ashes of the red heifer are mixed with pure water and is sprinkled on a person who's been defiled by the impurity of the dead. And he's purified, right? Why? Shehi hachana lePesach, that the whole nation should be purified for the upcoming festival of Passover. And so being purified from the Tumat Met is necessary in order to bring the Korban Pesach in the Beit HaMikdash. So it's a whole string of things that need to happen for a Jew to go to Jerusalem to the temple and bring his Korban in the temple. He's got to be purified from this impurity of the dead, and this is the way we always did it before we lost the Mikdash, was through this, what's called the Mei Hatat, the waters of the sin offering, which are the waters of the ashes, mixed with the ashes of the red heifer, which, some of you I'm sure have heard the news about the various red heifers that were born and hopefully would become the 10th red heifer in the history of the Jewish people, to bring back this purification process, which would enable us to actually serve in a Beit HaMikdash, assumedly that we would have one. Okay, with all that said, everything's fine. Purim is a preparation for Pesach through the Para. Now the Rebbe's playing on these letters Pei, Resh and Hey and Vav, Purim and Pesach. Ki, Parshat Para Korim, Kidei Shiyu Nizarurim L'Taher Mitumat Mei. Right? That we read this parsha in order to warn people about the impurity of the dead, because you can easily become impure by a dead item and not know it. If you walk over a dead rat, you're impure. If you walk into a house where there's a dead body, you're impure. If there's all kinds of ways that a person can become impure like that, and so we're warned about it before Pesach. And that's through the reading of the parsha of Para, the animal that we used to make the water of purity. Right? He says what we just said. But in the beginning, the concept is not Purim, it's just Pur. Pur means a lottery. A lottery, of course, is a form of gambling. And that's what Haman brought down on the Jews, was this Pur, this lottery. Now, phonetically, we're dealing with this Pei and this Vav and this Resh. Listen how he works it. Kipurim al Shem HaPur, right? That the name of the Hag Purim is about this lottery. V'achakav na'aseh para. But afterwards, from Purim, we add a Hey, and then we have the idea of the Para. So we went from Purim to Para. From the impurity, from the festival of the redemption from Persia to the bringing and reading the Parsha about the Para. Ki gam Purim hu Bevadai hiluk derech lePesach, because Purim is certainly the way and the pathway to Pesach. That one leads naturally into the other for many reasons. It says in Shira that his lips were like roses. It's a nice poetic image. Lips like roses, but it's going to teach us something else. The rest of the pasuk goes notfot more over, and they are flowing with more, which is another word for the Arba meaning. We bring in the more is the myrtle, right? The myrtle plant is more, and it's a fragrant plant. And so the image here is this person with very good breath. Siftotav shoshanim, his lips are roses, and his breath flows like the myrtle. Of course, these are all spiritual images that are teaching us about a high level of connection of speech to Hashem. It's reflected in the upper and the lower worlds. Okay. But this idea of the Siftotav, he takes it again out of context and he connects it to Pesach. How is the roses and the rose petals connected to Pesach? Pesach, through the mouth. The Pesach is the mouth, Pei, and Sach, speaking. So now we go back and we see that the lips are connected obviously to the mouth. And so he connects the Siftotav to the Pesach. And this is Shoshana Esther. And then he connects Shoshana to Esther. How does he do that? How does he connect the red flower, the Shoshana to Esther? Because Shoshana is Gematria Esther. 661. 661 is Gematria Siftotav and Esther. So obviously there's a connection here. We're getting deeper. We've connected now. Shira, Pesach, Esther, and this image of the beloved from Shira who has this beautiful look and lips and fragrance, scent, etc. And this is all from the Arizal, by the way. Notfot more over ze b'chinat Mordechai. And now, the end of the pasuk is flowing with the myrtle breath, if you will, is connected to Notfot more is Lashon Mordechai. So he just takes the lashon of Mordechai, Memvav Reish, and connects that to the more of the myrtle. And how does he do that? More over, Zeh Mordechai, more drawer. And that's also a lashon that is spoken about in the Gemara in Masechet Chulin, more drawer. And then it's further developed in the Zohar. The more drawer means freedom. It's the name of a bird who is a very free bird. It's a bird that is not domesticated, obviously. It's also not kosher to eat. But it is the drawer, I think, is a sparrow, a type of sparrow that you see flying around everywhere. And so the free bird, if you will, the more drawer, is related to Mordechai. Lashon Cherut. The drawer is freedom, and so Cherut is the word we use for free root. Ein ben chorin ela ben Torah. That only a person that is a Torah person has the sense of true freedom, because all of us are trapped in our bodies. All of us are souls that have been assigned to certain bodies for a certain time to do certain things. But we are not bodies, we are souls. And so freedom, ultimate freedom, is to leave the body altogether, which, well, we're not trying to do that too fast. We want to take our time with that, give ourselves 120 years. But nonetheless, the more drawer is this freedom of descent, which is the freedom of Mordechai, and this idea of Cherut. Now, where does Cherut take us? Well, it's the Cherut, of course, of Pesach. Pesach is the festival of freedom. Freedom from Egypt, the freedom from slavery, this freedom from a foreign culture and a foreign custom and a foreign language and a foreign ideals and the lack of ideals, I should say, right? So Pesach is all about freedom, and Mordechai now has been connected to this idea of freedom too, which is connected to this freeing of the scent. Of course, and the scent is always related to the neshama, the freeing of the soul. You see how the concepts are like layering on each other, one after the other, through the language of the verses the Rebbe is bringing. So this is a very dense way of explaining Torah, but it takes a certain genius to be able to see this and to do this. Now, since Cherut is Pesach, okay, Tzeruv Shel Purim Merumaz BePesach. Therefore, the letter combinations of Purim is also connected to Pesach. And the Tzerufim means literally the combinations of letters, but Litzaref means to purify or to join up. So a Tzoref is a silversmith. His job is to purify silver and then join pieces of silver to create jewelry, or to create a candelabra, or to create a crown. The Tzoref is the one who joins pieces of things together, but it's the lashon of also of purification. But here we're talking more about the joining, that the Tziruf of Purim leads us to Pesach. How do we see that? Tziruf shel Purim Pesach. We see it in the verse. Shivat yamim tochal matzot kasher tziviticha lemoed chodesh ha'aviv kivo yatzata mimitzrayim velo yirau penai rekam mimitzrayim velo yirau penai rekam Rosh Tevot Purim. So he takes this whole pasuk. It's brilliant, really. Who could even see it or think of it? He takes this whole pasuk about giving the festival, the mitzvot of Pesach. And then if you look at the last words, the last Rosh Tevot, the last first letters of the verse, Mi Mitzrayim v'lo yirau penei rekam, those are the Rosh Tevot of Purim. So you see the Purim is embedded in the command for Pesach. And remember, Pesach was given 1,500 years before Purim ever happened. But you see how there's an allusion, a prophetic allusion from one verse to a festival and an event of freedom that's going to happen much later. We became free from Pharaoh on Pesach, and now we become free from Haman on Purim. So this concept of freedom is being woven throughout the Torah. And this is something that the Jewish people have been dealing with for thousands of years, not just in Pesach and not just in Purim. But in every exile, we eventually end up getting somehow enslaved or threatened. As we see today, things are changing rapidly in the world climate towards Jewish people. Okay, so now this Rosh Tevot of Purim, Ki Purim hu derech lePesach. So now he's telling us again the idea that Purim is this path to Pesach, this path to freedom and purity. And the chief purity is, of course, of all impurities, is the impurity of death. And that's why we sprinkle the red heifer waters, because that sprinkling purifies the person from death. And what does purity from death mean? It means that you attach to all life. Death is just the absence of life. It has no other definition. So the impurity of death, don't think of it as a thing unto itself. Think of the impurity of death as just the absence of life. And the absence of life is, what most people are running from, one way or another. So when we sprinkle those waters, they came from a living animal and a living spring and a living plant, usually the form of zatar, hyssop in English, right? That this mixture of items creates this pure water. That sprinkling of life-giving things creates something that can push away the power of death. And that's what we're looking to do from Purim to Pesach, to push away this power of death in a way that we become purified for Pesach. And he tells us this is the reason why we read Para Odpam before Pesach, that we should be warned about Hametz, that we're able to be warned about Hametz before Pesach, so that by the time Pesach comes, we're not going to have this spontaneous reach for bread that we not often have. How many times does a person walk in the kitchen and reach for a cookie, or reach for a piece of bread, or reach for a donut on Hanukkah? How many times? So that reach is an automatic reflex that we have for bread, because we eat bread all the time. But actually, we need to be purified from that reflex to eat bread. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is we're purifying this automatic reflex before Pesach, so that by the time we get to Pesach, we're ready to eat matzah. And this whole idea of the purifying this automatic reflex is really the difference between a human being and an animal. That animals generally have instinct that overrides their mental process, and human beings have mental process that can override their instinct. Instinct is another way I like to call it the autopilot of the body. It's that your body needs to eat, and so you reach for whatever's available. But that reach itself is oftentimes without das. It's without the mind. It's without thinking. It's impulsive, and that impulsiveness is coming from what we call too much milk. It's coming from that lack of life. But life is mind power. When you take away mind power, all you have is the body's desire for its needs. If you take a human being, his mind out of him, all he is another body seeking air, water, and food, and shelter. So that's what animals want too. So the difference between us and the animals is up here, that we have consciousness of what we do, and when we don't have consciousness, we're operating at that lower level. And so this whole process of moving from Purim to Pesach is this process of purifying ourselves from that autopilot. And bread is the item that God chose to use because it's so central to our lives. If we can purify that impulse for bread from Purim, we'll really be ready on Pesach for that higher level of freedom. And anybody who's tried to stop eating gluten or stop eating bread knows what I'm talking about. Not a simple thing at all. Okay, very interesting. Rabbi Natan writes here in a note in parentheses, "Upasak be'emtza ha'inyan v'lo gila yoter." Rabbi Natan stopped in the middle of this talk and didn't reveal more, which also tells us something is going on with his creative process, that he decided it's enough. But then, interestingly, there's another last sentence attached to the Torah. This is the end of this Torah, called "B'techila ki b'techila hayu kol ha'atchalot b'Pesach." It says, in the beginning, all beginnings started with Pesach. The Jewish people began with Pesach. Our freedom from Egypt began with Pesach. Even the Yitzhak Avinu was born on Pesach. The Pesach was many different types of beginnings were connected to Pesach. And now we get therefore we see that many mitzvot that we do have allusion to the memory of our coming out of Egypt, because that's the beginning of the Am, and so you always return to the beginning to find your place, to find your compass, your spiritual location, your physical location. We're pointed to Jerusalem for a reason, because it's home. It's the beginning point of the Jewish people. That's why we point to Jerusalem. We're pointing home, wherever we are on the planet. And all of this is because we began as a nation to live as a people with the Torah after Pesach. And so now, the rest of the sentence, he goes on to tell us, V'akshav v'lo siyam. Rabbi Nachman cut off his words again. And now, the implication that's brought down later by Rabbi Natan is that now the beginning is Purim. That all the beginnings of the Jewish people started with Pesach, and after Purim, now we have it's like replanting your peg in the ground where you're gonna nail your tent down, where the center of the planet is, where the compass is coming from, where what do we call it, the axis of the planet rests. So So he's really saying that there's a transformation taking place from Pesach, Purim to Pesach, that all our beginnings began with Pesach, and now the beginning with Purim. Because the exile from Pesach is a much different exile from the exile of Purim. And the exile of Purim was chiefly a spiritual one brought down on us by an enemy. Whereas the exile of Pesach was not only geographic, it was also political, it was governmental, and it was even an exile over our bodies, which was not the case in Purim. So with all these ideas in mind, I think we can appreciate certainly the genius of Rabbi Nachman here in explaining the connection between Purim and Pesach and how one leads into the other. We see it in the letters, we see it in the Rashi Tevos, we see it in the concepts that flow from one to the other, and the Parshat Para in the middle, and how all of these are preparation for the purification. And chiefly, when we say the purification from the power of death, remember, we're talking about the power of death is the power of mindlessness. The power of not having consciousness is already like a piece of death. And by the way, this is why some mornings you wake up and you don't know where you are, because when we sleep is called 1/60th of death. And when we are disconnected from our upper soul, we have this shaychut, this taste of the power of death. This is why Netilat Yadayim is so important in the morning, because we want to wash that taste off. Because the taste of death is that emptiness, that lack of mindfulness, that lack of mental awareness, the lack of consciousness of Hashem's presence in the world and in our hearts. And when it's gone, you know it and you feel it. So we want to purify ourselves from that. And that's what's happening over here in this short little Torah. The Rebbe's laying out quite a bit of work. So we're getting ready soon. Now we have Tevis, Shvat, Adar. So we have 2 months almost, more than 2 months to Purim, and then of course another month to Pesach. So there's a preparation for a preparation, and Jews are always getting ready. So I want to bless everyone to have a great day and take this Torah to heart, and check yourself, check out your automatic responses, check out those auto reflexes, those autopilots that are trying to override our consciousness. Consciousness is godliness. Consciousness is from God, and that's why we call the mental powers molchim, and they're coming from the Shira. We talked about it from Chokhmah, from the Kedusha of Chokhmah, etc., and through God's names. So we've learned a lot about this in the Master Series on meditation, and we'll keep talking about it. This is where we got to go. This is what we got to do. All the best to all of you. God bless.